It's News Talk 550 KFYI, and the topic that we discussed for a good deal of time yesterday had to do with Ben Carson's comments on whether he believes anyone who is Muslim should ever be president, and he said no, he doesn't think that. He was asked, does a candidate's religion matter? He said, well, it only matters if it disagrees with the spirit of America or the Constitution. And somebody said, well, what if someone is Islamic? And he said, no, I don't think a Muslim should be president. So I thought, why don't we reach out now to the local CAIR, Arizona, and joining me now is an attorney. He is the civil rights coordinator, Liban Yousuf. And listen, it's a pleasure having you on the program here, because I know that oftentimes when you talk with media, things can be very contentious. So I appreciate that you're willing to take some time here and converse with us. Obviously, I'm going to suppose you disagree with what Ben Carson said.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, definitely. I think, it's clear that Dr. Carson really has no understanding of the Constitution, right? That the view that somehow just because of someone's faith, that their faith should disqualify them from being president or being qualified to be president, irrespective of their views. It's completely antithetical to the Constitution, period. And so it's surprising hearing this from a presidential candidate who's, taking the office to uphold the Constitution.
Liban Yousuf, the civil rights coordinator with the Center for American Islamic Relations. I had a number of conversations yesterday with people, and I guess I got a ton of different opinions and a ton of different people who suddenly were experts. And I always find that to be a very dangerous thing. So I want to ask you some of these questions point blank.
Yeah.
The question that came up, of course, is that if someone is Muslim, then they inherently subscribe to Sharia law, and that they cannot adhere to the Constitution if it disagrees with Sharia law. Explain to me how that works.
Well, unfortunately, that's part of, a trope that is being pushed by the anti-Muslim groups out there that are really trying to push this negative perception, this negative image of Islam and Muslims, and trying to create an environment, or at least a perception of an environment where, Islamic values, Muslim values are at clash with American values. Sharia, in its original term, just means law, right? So Sharia can encompass anything from the way I wash myself to the way my food is prepared, to the way I pray. So to somehow say that because you follow Sharia, whatever the conception of Sharia that they're trying to build, and you're going to be, opposed to American values is complete. It's just complete misinformation, and it's just a lie. It's a deception.
So how does this work out? Because, and I'm sure every religion faces this, as we had pointed out yesterday. Kim Davis, obviously the most recent example that we've seen from the Christian side. Mm-hmm. But how does it work out? If you have someone that is an elected official that is Muslim, and as an elected official, there is a law that they are to uphold that violates, say, the beliefs of the religious system. Where does this fall? Does someone uphold their oath and their affirmation to the U.S. law because they swore an oath, or do they say, listen, the secular law doesn't matter in the long run. I have to follow the laws that are prescribed in my religion?
Yeah, they definitely have to uphold the oaths that they swore to in upholding the Constitution, right? Because that's a reasonable expectation for any candidate running for any office, irrespective of their faith, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu. If a candidate is saying that, hey, I want to put my personal religious values above, the office that I swore to, then don't run for that office. And it's no different for a Muslim candidate, that if a Muslim candidate is going out there and they're running for public office and, they're making promises to the people that, hey, I'm going to uphold, the laws of the land, and I'm going to uphold the Constitution, I'm going to uphold the duties of this office that I'm running for, they have a responsibility to uphold that oath, because deception in Islam is prohibited, just like it's prohibited in Christianity, just like it's prohibited in Judaism. So to sort of, again, push this bizarre trope that a Muslim is going to run for office and then all of a sudden say, hey, you know what, I'm not, going to be held to the standards of what I ran for, is, again, it's it's just this deception by Dr. Carson.
Liban Yousuf is an attorney with the Arizona chapter of the Center for American Islamic Relations, and I think you must run into an awful lot of this because everything that you're telling me here is things that I said yesterday on the radio as well. But I was told, Merrill, one, you don't understand, or two, if someone tells you that, then they're lying. How do you overcome this perception that people of the Islamic faith can't be trusted?
Yeah, and again, right, it's just another trope of the anti-Muslim group. So Muslims are kind of thrown into this, this world in which if you hear a Muslim, from overseas saying, death to America and I hate Americans, then they're telling the truth. But if you hear, a Muslim living here in America or a Muslim anywhere in the world saying that, I love American values, I'm an American, then somehow that they're lying. And so we're kind of thrown, our community, the Muslim American community is thrown into this position that, when we're speaking out against whether it's extremism or we're speaking out against those who commit violence in the name of our religion, we must be lying. Or, when we say that we love American values or that we're American, we must be lying. And so, again, it's that trope that's being pushed by anti-Muslim establishment to, create this hostility and create this negative environment for American Muslims.
Do you see a change coming in the future? I mean, this is something I'm sure you've been fighting this obviously since 9/11 and probably prior to that in some degree. But do you see a change coming in the future? And if so, how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we have to, you have to be optimistic because, again, if you look at our, country's past, you look at our nation's past, it wasn't that long ago where people were questioning whether a Catholic should be president, or it wasn't that long ago where people were questioning whether an African American should be president. And so, we have a sort of unfortunate part of our nation's history, and so, you have to be optimistic, and, you can actually see a sort of change within the rhetoric. I mean, these anti-Muslim sentiments usually pop up around election season. I mean, in 2012 we saw the same thing. In 2010 we saw the same thing with the Ground Zero mosques. But the difference now is that it seems like people are more ready to kind of call out candidates for their anti-Muslim bigotry. I mean, Dr. Carson is the most recent example, but right before that we had Donald Trump, who refused to distance himself from somebody who said we have a Muslim problem, how do we get rid of them? And just a few months before that, we had Bobby Jindal, who's also running for the GOP, was pushing this bizarre, myth that Muslim Americans are setting up quote-unquote no-go zones in the United States in which people of other faiths and police officers cannot enter. And so, again, we election season, and we're seeing people pander to the fringe anti-Muslim segments of society, and the optimism comes from the fact that both the media and both public at large are really speaking out against this and letting these candidates know that, hey, this isn't going to fly if you're running for president.
Liban Yousuf, the civil rights coordinator with the Arizona chapter of CAIR, and do you guys have any sort of a plan working toward the future of putting up more candidates with a Muslim background to run for some of the local offices, the state offices, the regional offices, to, I guess, for lack of a better word, break people into the idea of more Muslim candidates in government offices?
Well, I mean, there's already, plenty of Muslims holding offices, both, in local offices and national offices, right? We have two Muslim congressmen, we have Muslim judges all across the country, and so Muslims are really no strangers to holding public offices. And the American Muslim community is diverse. We're not a monolithic community in the sense that we all hold the same political views. I mean, in my own family, we have people in my family that are registered Republicans and registered Democrats. So, I mean, I think the point here is that American Muslims are just like any other faith community in this country. If a Muslim, feels that, hey, I have things to bring to this country and I want to make this country a better place and to run for public office, go for it. But again, when we're judging elected officials and we're looking at elected officials, we want to scrutinize them for their ideas and for what they're going to do for the country, not necessarily just because of their faith.
Liban, Yousuf, it's a pleasure having you on the program. I look forward to being able to reach out to you again because, unfortunately, I'm sure this is not the last time that we're going to have this ugly head of prejudice rise up. So thank you so much for your time today, and we'll continue to get out there and try to make sure everybody has an equal shake here in a country that's supposed to be built on all men created equal. So thanks so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. I was glad to be here.
Very good. It's Chris Merrill. This is News Talk 550 KFYI.
East Side, West Side traffic. Lee Powell.